rematch. And then the last college football quarterfinal game, Sugar Bowl from New Orleans, from the Superdome, home of the Saints. It's going to be a good matchup between Riley Leonard and Gunnar Stockton's coming in to replace Carson Beck, as Carson Beck had surgery on his UCL, which is the bone in his throwing elbow on his right arm. And so that game will take place at about 9 p.m. on the East Coast, 8 p.m. in Central Standard Time, and then about 6 p.m. on the West Coast. And so that will be a good way to kick off the new year in New Orleans with Notre Dame and Georgia. And as you dive down deep into that game, you've got Notre Dame coming off of a good win against Indiana, good in-state game, as they're 3 hours apart from each other. They hadn't played that game since the 90s, but it was good to kind of have those two fan bases, as Indiana went 3-9 last year, got Curt Cignetti from James Madison, and got Curtis Rourke from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. He was a pretty good transfer this year, and they ended up going, 11-2? So that was a good season for them. And as we preview this Notre Dame and Georgia game, Riley Leonard, the Duke transfer, had 2,293 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. And then in the rushing game, you had Jeremiah Love for over 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. He had 142 carries, which was pretty good in the rushing room, the rushing attack. Leonard actually was in the rushing room quite a lot with 751 yards for 15 touchdowns rushing, which was really, really good. And if they want to have a shot at beating Georgia or doing well in that game, they have to get the rushing attack going pretty quickly in that first half. And they also had another running back for 683 yards, Jadarian Price. He had 7 touchdowns and 100 carries, and so they've got 4 or 5 guys that are solid in the rushing room. I could go on and on about the rushing room, but let's talk about Jaden Greathouse. Had a pretty good freshman year. He hasn't had as good of a freshman season as he had his sophomore year, but he still had 353 yards for 1 touchdown, which was a pretty good campaign. They also had 445 yards from Beau Collins, the senior out of LA. And they had Jordan Faison, who had a pretty decent sophomore season with 279 yards. And then they had a tight end, Mitchell Evans, for 289 yards. They haven't really been using their tight ends since Michael Mayer left, but I think it's a good opportunity to start using their tight ends, blocking, getting their tight ends open on the out routes or the seams or whatever. Just get that passing game going with the tight ends and fullbacks, and then you got those 4 or 5 guys rushing, which will open up that game. And I'm looking forward to a good New Year's game between the 7th-ranked Notre Dame Irish and the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs. That will be 8 p.m. Central Time Zone, 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and 6 p.m. on the West Coast, and that'll be nationally televised on ESPN, or you can get your tickets at $40 and book your trip to New Orleans. Most people are already down there practicing and preparing and getting ready for that game, as it's in about 2 days from now. I like New Orleans. I've been there several times in the past couple years, and it's a good trip if you're from the South. Just like it's just good to be able to like enjoy like the jazz music and watch some good football, and it'll be a good New Year's trip for the Irish fans and the Bulldog fans as they make their run for the national title, which will be on January 20th, and I'm looking forward to seeing that national title on January 20th, and I believe it'll be at 6 p.m. It'll be 6:30 Central Time Zone, and then 7:30 on the East Coast, and then 4:30 on the West Coast, and that'll be held at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the home of the Falcons, where Georgia and Texas faced off a few weeks ago in the SEC championship game. That's a good city. I like it, Atlanta, and if you're a Georgia fan or an Ohio State fan, be on the lookout for these games, even Boise State. I don't know exactly who's going to win, but my college football locks, this is before they even play the semifinal games. This is what my final picks are before they even play those games. I've got the Nittany Lions over Boise State, Sun Devils over Texas, Bulldogs over the Irish, and then I've got Ohio State beating Oregon.